All right, I'm going to say it again. If you're watching this, congratulations. That's got to mean you're in the second round of your playoffs. Or, as I've said before, you just love us, and that's even more amazing. Nameco Dustin here, Fantasy Smack Talk. Probably not the case. So, before we get into it, we're always going to do our tip with the playoffs here and some bad weather coming. Dustin, what you got?
This is the time of year where weather will start to play a bigger factor, and you do need to pay attention to it, but don't necessarily overthink it. You know, there was a lot of stuff going on last week in the forums and you know, pregame stuff as far as what do I do with Aaron Rodgers and, you know, the Detroit Packer game, there's going to be snow. Yes, weather does play a factor, and yes, it can change the game plan to a point. But at the same time, don't go crazy with it. What I like to do as far as suggesting what to do with weather, use it to break coin flips. You know, one of the things that came up in the forums was Eli against New Orleans or Aaron Rodgers against Detroit. You know, that's pretty close to being a coin flip. You can use the weather to break the tie there, but don't be starting, you know, anyone crazy over Aaron Rodgers just because they're going to call for a little bit of snow again in Green Bay. So just keep that in mind. And another thing too, kickers, be aware where your kicker is kicking. Obviously, you don't want them kicking in snow and that type of stuff. Try to swap them out and get a guy in a dome or somewhere. Nice sunny weather somewhere.
Sunny or dome, high winds is very key for kickers as well.
Yeah, so just keep an eye on that. Obviously, you know, Chicago, stuff like that. You're going to probably
The Bears.
Pittsburgh's another one. Forum questions. First one comes from, tough one here, Intravasai.
You like that? Good.
Yeah, it's close enough. Running back question. No Sean Moreno at Baltimore or good old Ryan Matthews versus Carolina.
You know, both of these run Ds aren't that good. I mean, Baltimore has some odd mystiques. Like, somehow, like, they're still a decent run defense. They're not. They're ranked in the bottom third of the league in terms of run defense. So I'm saying you go with no Sean Moreno here. Ryan Matthews has been nothing but a gigantic disappointment this year when he was drafted, his entire career. Now's not the time to bank on him and hope it works out. I would go with the hot hand, go with no Sean. You know, he got, I think it was something like 32 touches last week. It's not going to be that high again because I don't think they're going to blow him out by as much as they did Oakland, but I really like no Sean over Matthews this week. All right, next one comes from Joe Rowe 400. He's got a flex. He wants to know Mike Wallace or Bryce Brown. Wallace is at the Cowboys and Brown's playing at home versus the Bengals.
Well, this is where our bet of the week came from as well. You know, we did debate a little bit between this one before the show. I think Mike Wallace is the much safer play here. You know, you can move the ball against Dallas's D. Big Ben puts Mike Wallace back on the fantasy map. I think he's the much safer play. Brown goes up against the Bengals. They have been playing a lot better lately, but I think he's too risky at this point based off of what he did last week. You know, they proved that they're not just going to feed him the ball. It's going to be situational, and if the situation isn't good, he might not get you the points that you're looking for. Rebuttal.
Oh, we're going right into the bet of the week?
Right into the bet of the week.
All right, here's the rebuttal. Bryce Brown last week faced Tampa Bay, the number one run defense. I think that really hurt him, but also Tampa Bay is, I believe, dead last or second to dead last against the pass, so obviously the Eagles decided to throw the ball a lot more. I think that game planning just was a huge factor that it's not as easy to throw on Cincy, so I think Bryce Brown's going to get a much heavier workload, and it's not, what have you done for me lately? What have you done for me the last 3 weeks? Last 3 weeks, Brown has still been amazing overall, I say, and whenever it's close like this, you always hear in the forums, if it's a close flex question, I always lean towards the running back because you know he's going to touch the ball. Ben still has to throw it to Mike Wallace.
You don't know he's going to touch the ball.
He's going to
touch
touch the ball.
It last week. We'll see. It's too risky. Too risky.
Oh, now it's a guarantee I'm going to win. I want more money out of this.
All right. Next one, C-Power 17. Need to pick 2 out of these 3 running backs. So, Brent, who do you bench out of Jamal Charles at Oakland, Ray Rice versus Denver, or your boy Bryce Brown versus the Bengals?
Well, out of these, you got to go Ray Rice. Cam Cameron got fired, which is just mind-boggling. The team that's leading division fires their offensive coordinator. But my assumption is this hasn't been reported. This is just coming from Brent Niemko's head here. But I think that basically Harbaugh said, you got to give Ray Rice the ball. He said, I'm going to do my no-huddle, terrible offense. And he's like, fine, get out of here. We'll get somebody else in. So I think Rice is going to see 20, 25 touches minimum this week. Then next, I'd love to go with my boy Bryce Brown, but I can't. It's Oakland. We saw what No Sean did to them. They are so terrible against the run. And Jamal Charles has that big play potential, that 80-yard breakaway kind of speed at any point. So I say out of these 3, unfortunately, Brown's going to be the guy on your bench.
Benching Brown, huh?
He's going to be better than Mike Wallace is what I'm saying.
Hey.
And so is Charles and so is Rice.
It's sleeper and bust time. My sleeper, I'm going with Dexter McCluster. Now let me preface this by saying only in PPR leagues. I think he benefits the most from the Bo injury. He's got a great matchup against Oakland. He had one of his best games of the year against Oakland earlier this year. And I think he's a sneaky flex play if you're desperate in a PPR league. I think he could definitely be a 10-point plus play if you're looking for a guy in a PPR. Bust, Michael Turner versus the Giants. I know it might be easy to call Michael Turner a bust after what he did last week. He did have a decent game, but only, I think, 7 touches. At this point, you just really have to be scared with that. And I wanted to bring him up so that we could reiterate one thing we've talked about before. Yes, you should stick with your studs and start the guys that got you here. But at this point in his career, Turner is not a stud, and he's not a guy that got you where you are because he hasn't been that great this year. So if you have a high upside guy on your bench like Brown, bring him back up again. I think you start him over guys like Turner. He's just a mess right now.
Lock, you start him over Turner. All right, my sleeper, and that's going to be the Detroit Lions defense. I was doing the rankings this week. As of right now, I actually have them ranked as the #1 overall defense, and it's crazy because they've been a terrible defense. They really haven't been good fantasy-wise, but I think they're going to get a lot of sacks. Clearly, there are going to be some turnovers. Teams like the Niners are playing the Patriots, so you can't really like that. So I'm going to have to move them down a little bit, but there's going to be a lot of teams I'm going to rather, that I'm going to rank Detroit over this week. I think that they're going to put up a good amount of points. I'm going to try to start them in pretty much every league I got them in. All right, my bust, and that's going to be Macklin versus Cincy. Cincy's ranked 10th versus the pass, only giving up 222 yards a game. As I was alluding to in our Bryce Brown, Wallace discussion, Tampa Bay last week, you throw on them a lot, they give up 311 yards a game. They're terrible. That's why Macklin did so well. I don't think, he probably got dropped in a lot of leagues. I see a lot of people picking him up and hoping for another monster game again. I just don't see that happening. He's a decent wide receiver 3, but I'm not saying start him over any of your studs at this point.
All right, let's move into Mike's picks. His sleeper is Joik Bell for the Lions. He's really been getting involved a decent amount with that offense. Good matchup against Arizona. If you're desperate in a PPR league, he could be a decent guy. They love him in the passing game. And his bust is DeMarco Murray. He's back from injury. He hasn't looked terrible, but he's got a tough matchup against the Steelers. It kind of stinks because you've been waiting for him this whole time. He finally comes back. It's when you need him the most, and he's got a tough matchup, and it makes it hard to put him in your starting lineup. So if you have solid options, you might want to consider benching DeMarco Murray this week. But he should get the touches, so obviously the upside's still there if you're in a bind. But that's it. Hopefully you all have good luck with Week 15. If you got any questions, post them in our forums.
Thanks for everyone that's been in the forums. We'll give some shout-outs next week. He caught it. Way to go.